All right. Hello again and welcome everyone who joined our Structure.Gantt Bootcamp session number 3, which is also called Expert Hour and will be dedicated to answering your questions. Uh, we have some questions submitted in advance, but by any means, if you have your own questions or if there's something you want to us to clarify, just ask it in the Q&A section. So next slide, please. Islandworks has been acquired by Tempus some short time ago, and we are looking forward to the future solutions that this integration will bring, helping our customers to successfully achieve their goals. So this is the first session in a row. The recording of the first 2 sessions have been sent to the registrants. Recording of that session will also be sent to everyone. So if you haven't received recording from the previous sessions, please let us know in the Q&A and we'll send it to you. Some housekeeping. So all microphones will be muted. We have our Q&A feature to submit any questions or feature requests you have. And this session is being recorded, so we will send this recording afterwards in the follow-up email. And we also add, as I mentioned, recording of session 1 and session 2, and also the questions and answers from previous session into the follow-up email. All right, so we have our expert Nick here. He's a senior solutions engineer and he's our go-to person for any complex topics and use cases. So hello, Nick, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So yeah, I can see that people have started early today, and we've already got some questions in the chat here. Yeah, I just wanted to start with this first one we've got. So last time we talked about resource planning, and is there a way to set up a team as a resource and plan on the team level? Yeah, that's a great question, and absolutely there is. We can actually see this example here. I have a team set up, and this is actually how I'm planning on my current board. If we wanted to do this, it actually works the same on both cloud or on-prem. It doesn't really make a difference here. That's just going to be decided by our resource assignment attribute here. So when I set this to teams, I'm using teams. When I set this to assignee, I'm using assignee. If I've got a department or some other field to point to, those are all valid options. But I generally think of teams as, you know, for our long-term planning, because we probably don't have work 6 months out assigned to an individual yet. And then maybe for our short-term planning, we'll do something like assignee. And I am, you know, looking at active sprints. I'm probably looking at the next couple of weeks on this chart here. So assignee is probably a good way to go. But yeah, any field that we have is going to be a valid option there.
All right, that's pretty decent answer. So let's probably, we will be shifting between questions that were submitted in advance and the questions that will be submitted in the Q&A right now. So one of the popular questions that we've seen is when we have items that scheduled with manual dates, like for example, you have right now, when I change a task from auto scheduling to manual scheduling or vice versa, the dates are still there. Why it's happening?
Yeah, so that's some interesting behavior that's definitely worth exploring and explaining here. So I am going to delete this. I'm going to go back to my normal board here. So now I have a board with some items on it, and some of them are manually scheduled. So we can see like this one right here is manually scheduled. It's starting on the 13th of June. Now, we often, I'm sure that it's very easy to look at this mode and think there's 2 different options here. You know, one of them is auto and one of them is manual. And when we're in manual, we're using these dates. Now, if I switch it to auto, this date is going to stay here. It's not going to do anything. So we can switch it to auto, and we're going to see that line disappear because the behavior is going to change. And now this item is auto scheduled. So it's starting on the project start day, which happens to be the 1st of June, which is tomorrow, which is why our today line and our start day line happen to line up with each other. What's happening here is if we look at the configuration, I am using this start date field in Jira. So if I look at this, I'm sure I have it over here. Yeah, so I have a start date of the 13th of June for this item. When I set this to auto, what I'm telling it to do is ignore your manual scheduling dates. So this date is still here. It still has a start date. This field is still filled out. But I have told Gantt that this item is auto scheduled. The manual dates do not have an effect here. The part that isn't necessarily part of the question, but maybe is the next logical step here is there's some interesting behavior here. Because if we look at this one down here, this one's also auto-scheduled. It also starts on the 1st of June, but it's in a different state. So if we look at this one, we can see it's auto-scheduled. The difference is how they behave when we add a date. So if I add a date right here, I set the due date and I say, this has to be finished by the end of June. I'll say the 22nd. So we're trying to finish this by the 22nd of June. It looks like it's lining up to about the 6th right now. So that shouldn't affect. Oh, yep. So I've set the due date to the end of June and now it's manually scheduled. So it automatically moved to manual scheduled when I added that field. This one, on the other hand, is auto scheduled because I've told it to. So if I add the date here, it's not going to do anything. I can do the exact same thing. I'll add the 22nd of June here. Yep. And it's not going to move. And that's because I've explicitly moved this to auto scheduling. When I move this to auto scheduling, I say, ignore these dates. These dates are not how you're being scheduled. You're being scheduled according to, links and other relationships. When we have no dates, our kind of default stage is auto scheduling with no dates. And when we add dates, we move things to manual schedule. When we move things back to auto schedule, we're saying, I know I have something in these fields here, but I want you to ignore it. I don't want you to do anything with it. So yeah, just be aware of that behavior.
All right. Very, very cool answer. There's a question if this session focused on-prem or on cloud.
Yeah, we're trying not to be terribly specific. So if you have questions about one or the other, we're definitely taking all questions. But yeah, no specific focus on one or the other. I do happen to have the on-prem version open right now, just because there's more buttons and more things that we can do over here. But yeah, I'll definitely specifically point out if there's something that's not available on cloud.
All right, there's a good question from Jason. Is there a way to change the Gantt calendar to have a week number view? For example, the grid lines that on the week level, and instead of having arbitrary days or months, it would show the week number.
Yeah, so as you can see, when we change our zoom level, we're changing these dates up top. So as I zoom out, and this is kind of our week level, you can see from the 1st to the 8th and the 8th to the 15th. So these are 7-day periods here. But there's not a way to say, May week 1, May week 2, May week 3. Maybe this would be a feature request, if we'd like to change the way that this presents information. I could definitely see a use case for that. But no, there's not a way of changing that today.
All right. The next question is, can you show task in sprint with actual duration instead of sprint duration?
So that's an interesting one. So if I go back to my sprint chart here, again, we can think of this as that kind of auto versus manual scheduling. So what I've done here is I'm setting the duration based on this start and finish date. So the start is the beginning of the sprint at the end of March. The finish is the end of the sprint in the first week of April here. There is not really a way to change that duration. If I set this to auto schedule, I basically say don't use the sprint dates. So now you're no longer sprint scheduled and you're just going to follow your links. And we can see it has some links in the future. So it's being pushed out. I can set the duration here and say, you know, this has a 1 week duration. So it's not a 2 week issue. But it's either scheduled according to those dates and it's going to be the width of the whole sprint, or it's scheduled according to its duration and it's scheduled according to something else. We can't do both. They're kind of mutually exclusive here. So yeah, maybe there's a little bit more to this use case that I'm not understanding, but I don't see a way of combining those two.
All right. Okay. The next question is, if a resource works for multiple projects with multiple teams, how could we assign his time in this case?
That is a great question. So let's do that right now. So if I've got another board, I really wanted to, can't seem to open a second instance of Jira here. Okay. So yeah, so I've got my sprint management and I've got my reverse planning. So I've got two different boards, and sorry, the Zoom menu gets in my way here. And we can see Chewbacca is on both boards. So Chewbacca is on my sprint management and Chewbacca is on my reverse planning board. So as far as Structure and Gantt are concerned, and this is just a rule for all across the board, every single view, every single structure board that we have, every single Gantt chart attached to that structure board is its own unique view of the data. So what I mean by that is if we have these two different Gantt charts, they both have Chewbacca on them, they're not talking to each other. And that's by design, because maybe these two charts are the exact same set of issues with the exact same resources. And one is a plan if we do it like this, and one is a plan if we do it like that. Like maybe they're two views of the exact same thing, and so they're not overlapping. But again, maybe in this example, these are two different projects run by two different teams, and we have a resource that is across those different teams. So fundamentally, Gantt has no idea. Gantt is not going to do any of this for you. So we need to be very explicit with what we tell Gantt. So in this situation, I would probably do something like I would set Chewbacca as 0.5 here. So he's only 50% allocated to this project. And then I would do the same on the other one and say, Chewbacca is also, only 0.5 allocated to this. So he's 50% allocated on both charts. Now, if that changed over time, maybe we could say something like, June to July, we have, Chewbacca at, 40% capacity. And then, on the other board, we would do the same thing. He's partially allocated on this project for a certain period of time. But please be aware, we can have three different boards that all use the same resource 50%, or three different boards that all use the resource 100%, because every board is its own unique view of the data. There's not any interconnectivity there. So yeah, be careful that you're not double spending your resources when we're planning in Gantt.
All right, continuing with the resources. Can we use the field team from advanced roadmaps as an attribute for the resource assignment?
Yeah, we should be able to. So I have, it's confusing because I have two team fields here. One of them is a string and one of them is the field from advanced roadmaps. And I think this is the one, nope, that's the other one. This top one is the one from advanced roadmaps, and these are both the same. Really? Okay, yeah, they are. Okay, so they're slightly different. So yeah, that should be an available option. I don't have any values set up, which is why this is empty here. But yeah, if we actually go to resources, we will see that two different teams show up, the standard attribute and used in column. Oh, actually, I'm only seeing one of them. Oh, am I wrong? Yeah, I'm gonna have to double check on that. I think you might not actually be able to use the team field from advanced roadmaps. So that will have to be a follow-up. But yeah, can't know everything.
All right. Another question. Is there a field where the auto schedule start date is saved?
Yes. Well, yes and no. So um, there are several different things going on here. So when we have an item that is manually scheduled, which I think is probably, yeah, over here. So this item is manually scheduled, and we can just delete these start dates and due dates just to make that explicitly clear. So this thing has no dates. It is auto scheduled. So yep, no dates, auto scheduled. So this 3rd of June, is this stored in a field somewhere? Now, the technical answer is no. We do not have a JIRA field for that data. We do have an attribute for that data. Now, the difference between an attribute and a field is that an attribute is calculated. So this is calculated based off the Gantt chart, and we do have this Gantt finish date. So this, we can think of this as a field because, we can include it in the board and we can show it here. We can use it in formulas, all those other things. But this is technically not a field. If we wanted to make it a field, we could do that very easily with, the effector. And so what the effector does is it copies data, usually from an attribute to a field. And you can see attribute to issue field is one of the options here. And if I want, I can say, let's take Gantt finish date and let's write it to our due date. And, maybe even do something like this and say, not for my epics. I only want to do it for my stories and subtasks and things like that. And this would make it a field. But this is one of the examples of things that are not quite available on cloud yet. So the Gantt attributes, so Gantt finish date, Gantt start date, Gantt scheduling error. If we look at this list here, we have a lot of different fields that the Gantt is pulling, and these are all attributes. These are not real fields in JIRA. These are things that are calculated from the Gantt chart. They are not available in cloud today, but they are coming soon. I would basically expect them, in the next 60 days or so. So we can actually see that's on the top of our Gantt roadmap. So yeah, not too long, cloud folks. They'll be there soon.
Awesome. Next one. Can you explain how is resource usage calculated? Which of the values from original estimate, remaining estimated, time spent fields are used there?
Wow, that is a really good question. And the answer is complicated because we can set it up in different ways. So let's look at a couple different ways that we can set that up. So here I've got my scheduling using story points, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about time tracking. So there's multiple different pieces here. So one is how the work estimates work. And then another one is how the progress calculation work. And then another one is how the resources work. So how all these pieces fit together. And then also all of these can be configured different. So we can assume here that, I'm talking about assignees, I'm talking about one person, and I'm talking about time tracking. So what's happening here is I'm using original estimate. When I say use time tracking, I really mean use original estimate. We can see this one below is use remaining estimate. So what's going to happen here is if I have a task that is 2 days and we log 1 day worth of work, we are going to see that item filled in with progress, and that progress based on the work estimates is going to be roughly 50%. So this means 2 days is my original, 1 day is my time spent, my work logged. And I'm just going to see that bar basically halfway filled in with progress. If I do it this way, if I say use remaining estimate, in that exact same scenario, instead of being a 2-day bar filled in halfway with progress, half the bar will disappear. So it'll only be based on that remaining estimate. So it will be a 1 day, item on the chart here. And then the other thing that's worth mentioning is, also the remaining estimate could change. We could do something like we had a 2-day estimate, we logged 1 day worth of work, and now there's still 2 days remaining because it was bigger than we thought. And in that case, we'll actually still have a 2-day item because we're using the remaining estimate. If we were just using time tracking in that case, where we had 2 days, we logged 1 day, and there's still 2 days left, we would see a 2-day item with 1/3 progress logged because it's still using the remaining estimate. But there's a couple different ways that that these pieces could be working together. And then, sorry, was there a resources piece on top of that, or did I cover all the bases there?
Well, the general question was how it's calculated, what is used to calculate the availability in the resource.
Yeah, and then the resources piece is a little bit easier when we're dealing with assignee. We've got a resource of 1. We can think of that as 1 person per day at the standard calendar. So that's 1 person working 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. So, again, assuming that our, the estimates that we're dealing with are in days, and then we're burning down information in days, the math is relatively simple. But we could also change this. We could have a team of 5. We could have, a lot of other ways of calculating it. But at the simplest level, this is how the math works out.
Awesome. So the next question is, how did you set up, obviously in previous example, sprint schedule dates?
Yeah. So that's really quite simple here. So under manual scheduling, our first options are dates: start date, finish date, due date, milestone date, I mean. And then we just use sprints for manual scheduling. It's really just as easy as that checkbox. What this one is going to do is, we're going to use sprints assuming we don't have dates. But what we can also do is we can say use sprints even if we do have dates. We're going to use sprints to override dates. So it's just a matter of, are these dates more important, or are these sprints more important? But yeah, I mean, this checkbox is really all you need to schedule with sprints.
All right, cool. The next question is, are we able to show somehow a risk matrix with the Gantt, or maybe with the structure?
Yeah. So we could do a risk matrix in structure. I think that would be a lot. I think that the Gantt would not really be a good tool for that. So generally, the way that I would do that is, including our fields, and those fields might be something like, risk and mitigation and some sort of score and thing like that. We do have in our calculated columns. Oh, that's funny. I was looking for our rice column, which does not exist on-prem. It is probably one of the very few things that is on cloud, but is not actually on-prem. So I can just show this real quick on cloud because that'll be easier. So yeah, we've got this built-in formula rice, which is of course trying to do that. So it's trying to, or sorry, no, it's reach, not risk, but similar idea, calculating a score based on some certain fields, and then using that in the chart. So I would probably do something similar to that on the on-prem version. And then something that we couldn't do in cloud, but something that is really, really cool on the on-prem version is, we can create that formula column to, calculate our risk. So we've got our calculated risk. And if we get some sort of score, like let's say we give these a number from 1 to 5 to say low risk to high risk, then we can group them by that formula column. So we can say these are all of our 5 risk items. These are all of our really, really high risk items. And then we can see our columns that break down the different parts of that risk, the different mitigations that we're trying to pursue. And then, possibly put that into a Gantt chart to visualize the timeline. But most of the risk matrix stuff would all fall into the structure view.
I think we even have in one of our
oh yeah, we do. We
examples
have a
pre-built risk matrix.
Yeah, risk management matrix. I completely forgot. So this is not a Gantt Sharpie. As you can see, we got our trivial, low, medium, high, and severe. Luckily, we have nothing in the severe risk category right now. But yeah, it looks like we've got a couple down here. But yeah, this is how we would build our risk matrix. And as you can see, each of these are, just formula columns. If the risk is low or if the risk is high, we're going to color the panel different ways and show different information. This might look a little bit intimidating if you're not comfortable with formula columns, but I mean, it's very readable. I mean, we're saying if this field equals this value, return this, otherwise return this. It looks a little intimidating, but this is really a very simple formula. But yeah, let's get back to the Gantt
To the
side.
Gantt. All right. The next one, when we need to export the preliminary timeline, can we select only the epics and milestones? So not having the related task or stories.
Yeah, we absolutely can. And so this is probably one of my favorite things about both the structure export and the Gantt export. And that is just they look, they look how you expect them to look. They look exactly how we're looking at them here. So what I've got here is I'm hiding all of my stories. We can see this little eye here saying, not showing stories, not showing subtasks. So I'm only showing my epics and my initiatives. I'm only showing those high level items. And if I do something like collapse the whole chart, so it's just my 3 top level milestones, now if I export the chart, it's going to look exactly like this. So if you want a chart with only these top level milestones on it, no, sorry, not export to Excel. I clicked the wrong button. The other export to Gantt. And yeah, and it's going to do the whole chart. And yeah, and that took no time at all because it's a very, very small chart. I'm only doing these, but whatever sections we include or collapse or uncollapse, the Gantt chart is going to look exactly like we look at it there. So we can see, I'm seeing the quarters and I'm only seeing the top level items. If I change this and let's say, I zoom into the individual day level so I can see stuff in really clear, and then I open up all the individual items. Now I can, see a much more detailed Gantt chart. Now, if I export, it's going to look exactly like this. And this is going to be a monstrous Gantt chart. We can see it took a little bit longer and it's much, 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 much bigger and much, much, much wider, because of the level of zoom. So, it's very one-to-one, just get your Gantt chart looking the way you look it. And then when you click export, it's going to snapshot exactly that.
Awesome. The next one, is there a way to use data from sandbox scenarios and formulas? For example, calculate the difference in days between the baseline due date and the possible due date shown in the sandbox.
I don't believe so. I don't believe that there is a way to do that because there's not like a Gantt sandbox sort of field. So if there's something like Gantt sandbox date changed by this much or something, so yeah, there's not a nice way to do that. There is a plan that in a future version of Gantt we'll be able to access the baseline information. So if that became like a baseline, like we do something in the sandbox, we take a baseline and then we compare that to the real Gantt chart, then we could do it using baselines. And we could say, the baseline end date for this is 5 days later than the current end date. So like, our previous plan that we were looking at, or that sandbox plan that we were looking at, is different by this much. So that's how I would go about that. But it's worth mentioning, those baseline dates are not available as Gantt attributes yet. They will be available on-prem hopefully later this summer, but I don't have an exact date for that.
All right, cool.
But yeah, sorry, a long way of saying we can't do that today, but in a future version, I expect we will be able to.
Yeah, we'll definitely write it down as the feature request.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we have kind of twisted one about the teams and resources. If we have 2 teams temporarily working on different work, how do we reintegrate them when one team work has finished? For example, team 1 working on a large release and team 2 working on a short release, then joining team 1 once their work is completed.
Okay. Um, that is a really, really interesting example. So let me just re-explain it to try to make sure that I understand it. So we've got team one working on our big release. Team two is temporarily put on another project. And as they finish the work on that project, they're reintegrating into team one.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
so if we've got something like that, so yeah, I've got my teams here. Um, and so, yeah, I guess let's say like this team has 3 people, and then we want this to change over time and we want this to increase. So I would probably do something like this where I say, right now we're at the end of May, so we'll say end of June, we expect them to come back and be available and add additional capacity here. So we'll say, in June and July, we expect capacity to go to 130% because we'll call that one person with a little bit of room for error. And so now my capacity goes up to 4 people for this period, end of June, basically July. And then I could say the same thing, for August, from beginning of August to end of August. I do the same thing. I get to like 165%. We'll call that 2 people, kind of making these numbers a little bit round. And now, I add this person this month, I add this person this month. And then maybe once everyone's actually here, we can say, all right, the team size doubled, both teams are incorporated. Now we're dealing with this, and now I can delete these old sets of availability. Um, there's not really an automated way of doing it. I think that's probably what we were looking for here. Saying that like this team's overflow capacity goes into this team's capacity. There's not really a way of doing something like that. But honestly, that doesn't sound like a terribly uncommon use case. So I definitely like to follow up and understand how you'd like to see that work because yeah, other than this, I don't see a nice way of managing that in Gantt.
All right, cool. Could you show us how you create a milestone?
Yeah, creating a milestone is very, very easy. So like here, this one already happens to be a milestone, so that's not a good choice. And this one is of course a group, but if I find one of these, which is an actual item, we have a milestone button here, which is right here. So I can just say you're a milestone now, and that just converts it into the little diamond shape. The other way, of course, is we can do that with slices. So you can see, I say that my themes are going to be milestones, which is why these top level items are always being treated as milestones. And it's just you add that item behavior section and you say items that match this JQL are treated like a milestone. But other than automatically doing them with slices or manually doing them with the milestone button, that's pretty much it.
Great. Now one, this is more like feature request. Can we add the PNG export? It's annoying to have to use third-party software to just convert from SVG to PNG.
Oh yeah, I mean you can just so I mean yeah, I mean when we export we get the 2 different image formats, SVG and PDF. PNG is just a simpler format of that. I assume that you'd want to do that for compression for putting it on a website or something. Converting a vector graphic or a PDF to a PNG is really trivial. I hate to say no to feature requests, but I doubt that's something that we would do. But yeah.
All right. Anyway, it is noted, and we'll probably put it in the backlog. Then one, is there a way to extract resource availability from various structures, say through API?
I don't believe that's available through the API at present. But yeah, I would have to double check. I'm clever, but I don't have the whole API documentation memorized. So yeah, we'll have to follow up on that, but I would bet not.
Okay, we have several structure-related questions, which we probably also will go over. Is there a way to see what structures use that specific view and how much usage of structure gets?
Um, I do not know how to track usage of particular views on particular structures. There might be a way of doing it, but yeah, that is the first time I've ever been asked that question.
Yeah, I think we have most used structures in the structure menu, but that's as
Yeah,
far
but
as we
that's
can
not going to
go
tell
with
you about the
that. Yeah.
views. So yeah, we'll follow up with that one. That's an interesting question that I'll have to dig around to find that one out.
All right. Any way to track as a metric number of times baseline is moved or missed for scheduling tracking?
No. So as I mentioned before, the baseline is a really great feature, but there's not a way of using that information as an attribute. As soon as there's a field here like Gantt baseline end date, then we can write a formula and we can say this many issues missed their baseline, or this many issues are off by a total of this many days. But without the ability to pull that into a formula column, we can't really do any sort of calculation or counting or scoring or anything like that. But as I mentioned, that feature should be available soon. So hopefully this is a really easy formula to write in a month or two.
Awesome. There is a question about formulas and usage it with the structure Gantt. Uh, is it possible to calculate the resource usage, meaning total capacity versus actual estimations for the multiple teams based on two dictionaries?
Um, yes, it's definitely possible. It's funny because I would definitely describe this as a complex formula, but I can tell by the vocabulary used by this person that they are probably very competent at programming. Um, I'm sorry if this sounds like nonsense to people who are not programmers, but yes, that is a very possible formula. There would be some complexity around your date bounds, and Expert does not have the dictionary data type, so you'd have to make use of arrays. But other than those two hiccups, that's absolutely a formula that you could write. And yeah, if you need help, please reach out to our solutions team, solutions@almworks.com. We'd love to help you write in something like that. But yeah, that's a little beyond the complexity scope that I think we were trying to address today.
All right. There is a question about issue limits we can have in the structure. How many
Yes,
items
yes.
we
So
can
like
have?
number of issues we can have on the board.
Exactly.
Yep. Is that the whole question, or is there?
Yes.
Okay,
It's
sorry.
really short questions.
So the on-prem version is very simple. On-prem, you can have as many as you want. In real terms, that ends up being usually tens of thousands. I've helped customers build more than that, but just from a hardware perspective, it becomes very hard to have enough resources to do more than about 100,000 issues in a board. But if you had a very, very big data center instance with a lot of RAM and a lot of resources, we could probably help you build a structure a little bit larger than that. As a general rule, I think 10,000 is a very good limit. If we've got less than 10,000 items in a board, we basically don't have to worry too much about performance. It'll just kind of handle itself unless we're doing something really, really bad. On cloud, it's a very, very different scenario, just because you don't have control over the resources. That's kind of been outsourced to Atlassian. On the cloud version, there's actually a hard limit at 10,000, so we can't do more than 10,000 items in a board. This limit should increase over time as the cloud product becomes more mature. My understanding is that the bottleneck here is the APIs behind the scenes that are actually building this. I think once those improve in both their performance and in their limiting of how many issues you can pull in a single time, there will be a higher limit on cloud, but for right now, we can only insert 10,000 issues in a board on cloud. And there are some more complex, there's a little bit of complexity around how the insert generators work. Here on prem, I can say insert 10,000 issues. On cloud, 1,000 is the most that we can insert with a single inserter. So if we wanted to put 10,000 items in a board, we might need like 4 inserters to insert like 4,000 items, and then some extenders to add those additional items up to that limit of 10,000. But yeah, 10,000 is the magic number. If you got less than 10,000 on prem, you don't have to worry about performance for the most part. And if you've got less than 10,000 on cloud, you shouldn't have any problems either. But yeah, if you need an exceptionally large board with more than 10,000 issues, yeah, please reach out and we'll try to help you, deal with that.
Awesome. There is a question about your current structure view. So you have themes and initiatives over there. Are those themes another type of Jira issues? And can we use initiatives as a milestones?
Yeah, so these are a different issue type. We can see that I've got a different icon here. Ultimately, there's a lot of different ways that we can organize issues. I sometimes see a lot of levels above epic, whether it's initiative or feature or change request or theme or what have you. That is very, very open to interpretation. As far as making them treated differently, I mean, that's really trivial. Like what I've got right here is my theme is a milestone. If I want to change that, I mean, I can just do theme initiative. And now these are both going to be treated as milestones. Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really trivial change. And now we can see all of my initiatives are now being treated as milestones. But as far as Gantt and structure are concerned, they're just issues. If you want to say this issue is high level and has these attributes, and this issue is low level and has these attributes, I mean, structure and Gantt don't care. They don't have any sort of idea of what's right and what's wrong. I mean, if you wanted to build a completely upside down hierarchy where your subtasks are your high level planning items, and it goes down through all these levels down to theme, and your theme is your low level planning. I mean, that's a very strange way to do it, but structure doesn't care. Structure doesn't have any idea about which items are used for what. It's all up to you to configure and design.
Awesome. Is there a way to bulk change all in-progress issues to be manual scheduled and all of our open issues to be auto-scheduled?
Yeah. So I mean, that's basically what I've got here. So I've got these slices based on the status. So let's say that this one is in progress. And this one is done. So yeah, and I'll change this name. So we say, my in progress one is going to say manual scheduling, and it's just going to turn it off. And we'll just say, for ones that are in progress, manual scheduling is turned off. This is going to effectively make them manually scheduled, auto scheduled all the time, because they can't have dates no matter what. And then I can do the opposite on done. Done, here it's obviously using the default, which is, use these start dates and then allow manual scheduling. But if, for example, I had this turned off in my main, I could do the exact opposite over here. And I could say, manual scheduling is allowed. I want you to use these fields. So yeah, I mean, we could say in this status, they're auto scheduled. In this status, they're manually scheduled. I realize that sounds pretty contrived. I realize that sounds like pretty why would you do that? That's like a weird way to do it. So to make this a little bit more real, the way that I would probably do it is something like this. Let's say manual scheduling is turned off. So if items are in that to-do state, they don't have the ability to do manual scheduling. And then as soon as they get to in progress, no, I'll do the opposite. So yeah, so if they're in to do, we can manually schedule them. We can move them around. We can give them stuff. As soon as they move to in progress, we could say, maybe instead of using start date, we use a formula, and that formula could be, first transition to in progress. So we use that, first transition to in progress as the start date once it's in progress. First transition to in progress is a valid option here. So now I say when it's in progress, sorry, I'm still editing here. So when it's in progress, we use that first transition into in progress date. So that way our in progress ones are always right. And then for our done ones, we can say, as soon as it's done, I want to use resolution date for manual scheduling. So as soon as it's resolved, and I could be maybe more specific here, I could say, and resolved is not empty. So like this is really done. It has a resolve date. And when that happens, we're going to use this is the end date. The reason why I might do it like this is because sometimes an issue gets resolved and then it gets moved out of resolved. So we might have a resolution date, even if it's not in that status. So we can see that here. If I add resolved and status, we can see, damn, I should have, I'm sure I have an example of one that has a resolution date, but is not done. And even if I don't, of course, we can kick this back and say, oh, this is in progress again. It's not quite done. And you can see it still has that resolve date. Oh, the resolve date does go away. Damn, Jira is smarter than I remember. But yeah, just to kind of make this a little bit more real, there are some applications here for having different states of the workflow, use different dates and use different information on the Gantt. So we can get into a lot of complexity there, but yeah, definitely want to try to leave room for more questions.
Awesome answer. All right. Does Gantt use resource mapping?
Does Gantt use resource mapping?
Yeah, I think the closest one we can build with the grouping by resources. And visually put the amount of hours on the Gantt.
Yeah. So yeah, we can do that. If I go back to my sprint management, so naturally I'm assigning this work based on the assignee field. So if I add another grouper here and group by assignee, and again, it's only because assignee is my resource that this works. So now I can see what the resource capacity is right here on the line. So we can see this is Chewbacca's, this is Han Solo's, and this is Nick Fury. So it looks like Chewbacca and Han are a little bit over allocated here. They've got too much work going on, while Nick has a little bit of spare capacity here. So yeah, I mean, this is, but again, if it was team or if it was department or if it was something else, we would need to group by that field. So yeah, depending on your setup, you might need a different field grouping here. But yeah, whenever we group by the resource, we're going to show what their allocation is right there on the board.
Cool. Can you add multiple sections based on the same attribute on a slice?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm sorry if that wasn't clear, but that was what I was doing in my last example. So you can see I've got the color here, changing this to purple when it's in progress. If I add another section like manual scheduling, we can see that purple section is still at the bottom. So we can add as many sections as we want. So we can say if they're in progress, we're going to schedule differently. We're going to use different resource assignments. We're going to change the color. We can add every single section here to customize as many parts of the configuration as we want. And this is by design because you can't have two slices that both say status and in progress. If I add another slice that says, status equals in progress, this slice is never going to be hit because this top one's going to match and it's never going to get down here. So if I want to change multiple things, I have to do it all in one slice. So yes, please add multiple sections, make a bunch of changes all at once. That's how you're going to get the most utility out of these slices.
Awesome. This is a good one. Is there a way to combine the option, treat parent issue as a group, and don't treat parent issue as a group in the same structure in Structure Cloud.
In Structure Cloud. All right, so let's switch context over here. So I'm hopping over to Structure Cloud. I'll move this column here, and if I add Gantt, this is taking a second to load here. Sorry, can you ask the question one more time?
Yeah, so the person wants to combine for some of the issue treat parent
yes,
as a group, and for some item doesn't treat it way.
So so for this, I want to treat some parent issues as groups and some as not groups. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to group. I'm going to group based on the epic fields here. So now I've got epics and stories, and no epic here. So if I want to do two different things and say treat parent issues as groups and also not treat some parent issues as groups, I can do both. So this is going to say if you're a parent issue, treat you as a group. And then I can do something else and say, epics, not groups over here. And I will, say if type equals epic and progress equals done. So if this is a status is the word that I'm looking for here. So yeah, if it's a done epic, then I don't want it to be treated as a group. And this slice will override that configuration. I'll just put it at the top to make sure it gets hit. And I'll say treat it as a task. So this is not going to be a group. It's going to be a task. And let me add my status here. It looks like so I've got some not done epics and I've got some done epics. And so we should see them as groups and as not groups. So now it looks like this. Yep, this epic is a group because it's got in progress. And this epic is done and it's treated like a task. So yes, we can use treat parent issues as groups, and then we can override some of those and say don't treat them as groups. Of course, all those other options would be equally valid. So maybe if I didn't want them to be a task, I could say do not show, or I could say milestone. There's a lot of different options here. But yes, we can say treat all things this way and then treat a subset of them differently according to that slice.
All right, continuing with slices. If you want to add different colors based on the status category, would you need different slices, or could you add them into the same one?
No, we would need different slices here. So yeah, this is somewhat common. So we could do, and again, it's whatever you can do in JQL. So so yeah, I can say, we'll go to JQL and we'll say status category equals to do. There we go. Okay. So yeah, and if I say status category equals to do, I can change this and say, they're gray. And then I can do, a very similar one and say, again, status category. And then give this one a different color. But I need to have explicit definitions for these. So I need to say this category is treated as this appearance, and this category is treated as that appearance. So, I'll say that my in progress ones are yellow, and then I could say that my done ones were green. But I will need a different one for each status category. I have been using status, and that's really just because I only have 3 statuses, just because this is a very simple setup. If I did have a lot of workflow statuses, I think using status category is a much nicer way, because, if we add more statuses in that gray or blue status, we might want them treated all the same. So this is probably the best practice if we're trying to color these and understand what workflow state they're in.
All right, awesome. I think we have time for another couple of questions. In a multi-project structure, what is the best way to show issues that are blocked by other issues which may not or may be already inserted in that structure?
Yeah, that is a great question. On cloud, it's going to be a little bit more challenging. However, on-prem, we can do that really, really easily with a formula column. So with formulas, we can access the issue links. And so we can, grab issue links and we can say, I'm looking for a type of blocks. So this is issues that are blocking the current issue, and we can see it gives me a list of A points to B in this kind of blocking link. And then of course we can try to ask the question of, is this available in the board? When we change it to wiki markup, these become clickable links, so that way I can just click over to SP26 or SP7, and now I can see that some of these are done. So if we're blocking an item that's done, maybe that's not a risk, maybe that's not a consideration. So we can change this and we can say ones that are blocking that are not resolved, and things like that. This will be coming to cloud later this year, but I don't think we have an exact date for that yet. On cloud, we'd probably have to build the structure around showing those links to understand those relationships. But this is really one of the really cool features of formulas, because we can start to access information that's not in the board, and we can ask questions about, is there anything I'm forgetting? Are there any links that I haven't shown here? So yeah, that can be really helpful. And just a friendly reminder, Gantt is only showing links when both items are in the board. So this is B, because we've got a link showing that's pointing to it from the future. And this link only shows up when A and B are both in the board, because we've got A, we've got the link between them, and we've got B. If we only had A and B wasn't in the board, we wouldn't show a link to nowhere. So there could be blocking links that aren't included, especially if they're in a different project or assigned to a different team. So yeah, that's definitely something we'll want to watch out for.
All right, so looks like we are on the brink of the hour, so that was the last question we have time for. Thank you, Nick, for a really great Q&A session. Sorry if we haven't answered your question that you submitted to the Q&A session. We will answer all the questions we've got and we'll send it as a follow-up, as well as the recording of the session. You can always contact us if you have any specific use cases or you struggle with something. So we have a solutions team that will help you to go through your case step by step. Thank you all. Thank you, Nick, again, and have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.